David, over your career, you've spoken to 1.2 or more million people. Um, what have you learnt about people during this epic speaking at people time?
Well, from speaking to audiences that have indeed numbered well in excess of 1.2 million, what I've learned is that it doesn't matter how good or bad we think we are, all of us are good and bad in equal measure, but all of us have got potential that we scratch the surface of.
Wow. And see,
And most of us are good people. 99.9% of the world's population, regardless of colour, class, creed, religion, background, social class or standing, most of us are really good people.
I love it. I love it. So as you stand on stage and you speak to people, I know that you've got talks with titles, but if there was an underlying desire or series of themes that you wanted people to walk away with, what are you subliminally like implanting towards them as they go off on their day, having spent some time with you?
Well, if I've been given long enough with an audience, my objective is not just to tell them that they're better than they are or to show them that they're better than they are. It's for them to evidence in the room there and then that they're better than they think they are. So my whole ethos is great. Get great content from my research interviews, condense that content into simple, practical, usable models that I can then evidence with people in front of them where they prove to themselves that they're better than they think they are. So I haven't, maybe this is something that you, Rob, and the audience can help me with. I have never, in 24 years of presenting, found a name that describes what I'm about to describe. So I wouldn't call myself a motivational speaker. I get called one. But what I do is I give people information where they there and then motivate themselves. I don't know what you call that, but that's my aim.
It's a gift giver.
A gift giver. I like that. I've been called an encourager before, but that doesn't sound sexy, does it?
No, that's it's like, congratulations, you're an encourager. Well done, you. Um, it's a gift. How what do people notice as they take these tools and use them in the room? Because it's, a traditional public speaker or motivational speaker or professional speaker often sits with a whole bunch of people facing them, and
Yep.
there's a clap and a round of applause at the end. Maybe there's an opportunity for a question or five. Um, what do you do that gets them actually taking and applying? Because that doesn't happen very often.
Well, and that's the reason why I do it, because I'm for those who don't know, because this has got a global audience, Rob. So I'm from Birmingham, in the middle of the country in the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and we're known as a fairly dour, cynical kind of a bunch of people. And so I used to be incredibly skeptical of all personal development. I just thought it was shiny suits, tall, slim people, shiny suits, white teeth, pointy fingers, and winking, going, hey, work hard as me, you too can achieve. And then they'd go away. They'd never show you how. And when I started my research interviews, I did that to find out how I could become happier, maybe more successful. And I did it just for me. Originally, I never, ever intended to become a speaker. I'm one of the few professional speakers that never set out to become a professional speaker. It was something that happened as a result of things I did.
Mm.
And so how does it happen? I refer to the earlier point, really. Yeah, great content. I try to deliver it. I try to deliver it from a place of service. And how do they get it? Do you know, I'm struggling to answer that one. Maybe that will come to me as we go on.
It just strikes me that as we speak, we offer people a gift, right? We pass them
Yeah.
the box of something. And some people will go, that's a nice box, and they'll put it on the shelf and it'll collect dust until they change jobs, or even dust in their brain. And other people at conferences leave the box in the blinking room. I never figured that one out, but I've seen that a whole bunch of time. And there's some people who are like curious children and they whip off the lid and they want to play with it all there and then. And there's a fine balance because you want them to play with it all, but equally you want them to engage. And some people go straight into the deep end of playing with it all, and then they lose themselves in a bubble, and maybe that's fine. But I just wondered what it is. I mean, you mentioned research a lot. How's that play out as in terms of preparing the content?
Well, that actually is a really intelligent question. No one's ever asked me that before, but the answer is a simple one there. So it's given me the confidence to serve people free of the need for validation or approval from an audience. Now, that sounds incredibly arrogant. So if I may qualify what I've just said there, I don't need approval from an audience. I'd love them to trust me, because if they trust me, they might respect the content. And if they respect the content, they might have a go. If they have a go, they'll love it. So what I do is I seek trust and respect rather than approval. That makes me confident in my delivery. But if you've ever seen me speak live, I'm quite bullish by nature when I'm presenting. So in equal measure, I'm like the velvet boxing glove, Rob. Okay, so I go, you're amazing. Wow, how's it working as a plan, not doing this in your life? So more people are going, okay, I'll look in the box, to use your metaphor. More people are inclined to go, okay, I'll look in the box, because I point out their pains and their pleasures. So I'll talk about the dreams, the goals that they've got. And it's amazing, by the way, how many people have either A, not got goals, or B, have never in their life been taught or bothered to learn how to set goals. I mean, I would guess at this high 90%. It's staggering how few people have ever set goals or know how to. So it makes me bullish. So because I'm incredibly passionate, I deliver the same content for 24 years, and I'm still as obsessed with it as I was on day one, because I see the results it gets. So I work with their goals, but I also point out to them just how often we settle for mediocrity. And I don't just stand there and go, hey, have you ever worked out how long you spend in mediocrity? I actually have got hardcore statistics from psychology, positive psychology, neuroscience that back up everything I say on approximately how long we excel and how long we spend plodding saying that'll do. And it terrifies people, as it terrified me when I first understood it. So I do the old sales thing of the pain and the pleasure. What's the pain point? Be the paracetamol. I'm there. I say, look, I've got a really simple solution. Most of you will dismiss it as simplistic. All I will say is, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. Have a go. Play with this. And those that play with it get results.
I love it. People. Let's have a quick chat around goals, because people, everybody sets goals, but
Yeah.
I think they get a broken version. That maybe we say a New Year's resolution is a goal, or a dream is a goal, or what in your mind is a goal, or in your research is a goal.
Okay, thank you for saying that. Yes, according to the research, because it doesn't matter what I think, because it's just an opinion. You're absolutely right, Rob. Right. The research suggests that a goal is a structured plan towards a specific objective. Anything else is either part of a purpose or it's a dream. And there's nothing wrong with purposes and dreams. But without a goal, the others don't tend to happen.
And what are some of the objections, or have you had objections from people about setting goals? I've had,
Oh, yeah.
I work in the Christian environment mostly, and people say, well, it's God's timing and God's will, Rob, so I don't need to write goals. And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting, but actions without, faith without deeds and all that. Maybe we should go and think about how we're going to strategically multiply our talents. What are some of the funniest things you've maybe come into in your career of people going, oh, sorry, David, goals, nice idea, but not me?
Yeah, I've heard people say, I don't set goals. I've heard people say, goals put yourself under too much pressure. I've heard that people say goals are negative because they put you under too much pressure and oblige you to do things that maybe you don't want to do. I've heard people say that I tried goals, they don't work, so therefore they don't work. So many. Also, I've also had some very honest people who, at the beginning of the session, said, I don't set goals. But by the end of the session, have come to me and said, actually, I've realised that I don't set goals because I've been afraid of succeeding.
The fear of success is far bigger than we all realize, from what I've found
Yeah,
over the past 2 decades doing this.
yeah. Fear of success and fear of failure. But most of the fear of failure actually is hinged around a need for approval and acceptance. So again, that's it's hard to argue with what's true, and I've seen too much to argue with it now. I've seen too much to argue with it.
So, what's the purpose of setting a goal? I mean, look, this interview, we jumped into goal, and we're on YouTube and podcast. There's goal setting everywhere, right? We talk about smart or smarter and all of this stuff. But what's the actual purpose? Like, why bother set a goal, really? I mean, I've got my version, but I'll share it in a second if you want me to. But I'd be curious to know, what's your purpose of actually bothering to take the time to do it in the first place?
Okay, and I mean this really respectfully, Rob. I'm not going to share my purpose here.
Ooh.
Because my purpose is my purpose between me, my wife, and my God. Now, and I would urge everybody else to get a purpose, but it's their business. There's a lot of hype and excitement around goals and purpose. You yourself just correctly said that, you're going to have to do is go onto YouTube, and you're flooded with very inspiring white-teethed people who want to sell you something that will help you achieve your, 50x your goals. And people get really excited about that because it's full of potential, promise, anticipation. But actually, again, I can't argue with what I see in the room globally, which is still 90% plus of people in an audience that I stand in front of, business or education audiences, they don't set goals. It scares them, terrifies them. So with regards to the purpose of a goal, to answer your question, because I'm aware I just went totally left field there. Oh, look, a pigeon.
Carry on.
Okay. Rob asked me a question. Look, a pigeon. I'll go over there and look at the pigeon. So the purpose of a goal is that if you are genuinely one of the 2% of the population only who are genuinely satisfied with your lot in life, this conversation isn't for you. But typically, there's only 2% maximum of the population who are genuinely just comfortable in their skin, happy with everything going on in their life. The rest of us say, oh, I'm all right. And then the next breath say, oh, I wish I could. I wish I would have. I wish I had have. I wish I could have done that. Been there, achieved this. But they don't, because they're afraid of setting goals and failing or succeeding. So the purpose of a goal is to give yourself support and accountability to take regular steps of action towards your chosen objective. And I stress the word your there because without a purpose and a goal, you are just living a life at the whim of everybody else's goals. Because everybody in our life, Rob, has an agenda for our time. Everybody. Our friends, our family, our life partner, husband, wife, if you're privileged to have one, your children, inland revenue, the taxman. Yeah, everybody has an agenda for you and your time. Even the dog. How do they know when it's time for feeding and walking? But they do. Everybody has an agenda for your time. So if you are not focused on your goals, you can quite happily and easily get sucked into theirs. And which is nice, helping people, serving people. But are we serving people by not being the best we can be? everywhere you look, there are quotes, metaphors, and analogies and stories of how you've got to put your own life jacket on first. Too few people do. In fact, to quote top achievers that I've interviewed, they say that if you don't set goals, you're setting yourself up for mediocrity at best. And that hurts. And I can even quote the person who told me that quote first, because when he said it, I literally felt the life force drain from me, Rob, because I realised that I had not been setting big enough goals. I'd just been plodding, using life as an excuse not to, rather than finding out what's possible. Sorry, long answer to a great question.
It's interesting because I've been coaching for 32 years this year. In this context I'm in now, the Christian bit's quite new, but this context of people, business, purpose, performance has been over 2 decades. And I think that goals are one of the most misunderstood things out there. And
100%.
People get worried about success or failure, and I think that the moment they say that, I'm like, in my view of the world, you don't understand goals then, because I don't think achieving my goal, I don't think is actually that important. My goals are huge. I mean, 100,000 Christian business owners and entrepreneurs within KingdomPreneur. That might take me a week, a month, 2 decades. I might be dead before KingdomPreneur achieves it. I don't know.
Wow, a million Christian entrepreneurs.
100,000.
A million. Wow, that's great, Rob.
A million. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we'll see. We'll start with 100,000. Eh? But here's the thing. Yeah, that's it. We'll start there. Here's the thing: is I wake up in the morning and I then what? Right? I read my Bible and pray a bit sometimes. Other times that happens later in the day. Well, regardless, but then what? The thing that this goal thing does for me is it allows me to have direction with regards to how am I growing me? How am I using, you mentioned time, how am I using my time, my financial resources? What's actually important and what's kind of society tells me is important? Let's say you mentioned 1 million Christian business owners and entrepreneurs. Let's say that is the goal. In some respects, I don't have that much control over how quickly or when that gets achieved. I mean, I have some control over this hour, this week, this month, but it kind of gets beyond the hour, the week, and the month. And then a lot of things can happen in the world. But how do you know when you go to bed at night that you've used today purposefully? You've used the resources you've been given to its fullest effect. And that's not just about cash and business. I've been the best dad I can be today, the best husband I can be today, the best job I can be today. And I think if we look at goal setting globally, my opinion is it's broken because it's about success or achievement. It's not actually about direction.
And that's why we talked about this earlier. That is why a purpose and a goal are intrinsically linked, or should be. People who only set goals without a purpose behind it tends to be, and forgive me, this sounds really cheeky, but I try to use a bit of humour when I'm delivering painful things. So the people who only set goals tend to achieve really big things because they are tenaciously focused. But these are the same people who, maybe in their mid-50s, like myself, find themselves on the 19th hole of a golf course, drinking whiskey out of a cut-glass whiskey tumbler, wondering why they're on their 4th marriage and the kids don't speak to them anymore. And they'll say, but I did it for them. And I'll say to them, did you ask them what they wanted?
Or had you even stopped to work out what you really wanted? That's another thing.
There's a guy called Graham Alexander who brought coaching to Europe during the 1970s from America, and he's a fascinating guy. And he said, the one thing I do differently, Dave, is I teach my clients Buddhism. And I went, eh? I was not expecting that. This was a really successful coach. I'm talking top 3 in the massively successful guy. I said, Buddhism? He says, yeah, I show them wherever they go, there they are. I said, oh, sorry, I'm from Birmingham. What does that mean? Keep it simple. He said, if all they ever do is go after the goal, wherever they go, they'll still be the same person when they get there. You have to think and behave differently on the journey. You have to become a different person. Otherwise, wherever you go, it doesn't matter what car you have, what house you live in, how much bling you're wearing, how much cash you got in the bank, or the helicopter on the pad outside. At your funeral, they will not say, good old Trevor, he financially provided for his children. Good old Linda, she had a helicopter. They're not going to say these things. They'll talk about who you were and the difference you made in their lives. I've had a billionaire sat in my office on the chair over there in tears because after 2 hours of me asking him simple questions, he realised, I don't know why I'm doing this. So if you've got a great big goal, but you know why you're doing it, you become borderline unstoppable.
Very funny you mentioned the tears. I had a very successful client in a session with me literally 2 months ago, I think it was, in floods of tears, and he's just hit a monthly amount of personal profit in his business. The profit that's going to come out in dividends to him.
Yeah.
And it is the amount that he's always had his head set on. And he said, I've done it, but nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Tomorrow I've got to come back here. He was in his office. I've got to fire that person, hire this person, deal with that, pay the tax man. Absolutely nothing has changed. And I'm not saying that money's not important and that we shouldn't pursue some prosperity and some wealth for ourselves. In fact, I'd say you definitely should do. But that in and of itself, with no other linkage throughout life, is just hollow. It's just, yeah.
And if you ask most people a couple of simple questions, most people's goals and big goals are not financial. Most of them are related to relationships, happiness, well-being, personal goals. Most of them are not financial goals. Sure, they're in there, but for most people, not the big one.
It's usually an experience of some sort, an experience of life in a way. It's very funny, we can talk about money very, very briefly, and you can't make money by focusing on money and get any value out of the money. It's very interesting that we don't ever have money problems. We only ever have people problems. And so as I'm working with clients on goals, it's you've got to think of the goal is all about people. If you want to make a lot of money, that means you've got to sell to or serve a lot of people, right? In a way, whether you like it or not. If you want to be happy, well, unless you're going to become a monk in the middle of nowhere on your own on an island, like you've got to work out how you engage with people, loved ones, family, friends, community, whatever. And a million KingdomPreneurs in KingdomPreneur, if they all pay me $1 a month, right, as a membership fee, got financial goals sorted. I don't have to worry about the money. I actually have to worry about the people, and it's kind of that simple.
Can I ask you a question, Rob? And forgive me, this is only because, and I do mean this very sincerely, you've asked some very intelligent questions and you've responded very, very capably to some of the things I've said. And we talked about fear. And when you watch this back, when you said 100,000 and I jokingly said 1 million, and when you realised what I was doing to you, you went, oh, well, maybe one day, let's just start with this. What was going through your head then?
I was completely caught off guard. I didn't hear the 1 million to start with. In honesty, I didn't get the humour to start with. I thought you misheard me. So the honesty is, so the 100,000 comes actually as part of my calling. So as part of the lightning bolt of God that struck me in the head and turned my life upside down is where the 100,000 came from. It was, to be precise, it was 100,000 members of KingdomPreneur. That was the structure and the size. I guess to achieve that, I'm going to have to touch a lot more lives to get there. But I think also it was a bit of I'm struggling to wrap my head around the 100,000 and actually getting there in a timely way that I see before I die. A million, that's a 10x stretch further than 100,000, and that's another whole load of mental gymnastics I haven't got as far as yet.
Okay, well, to show you the kind of thing that happens when you interview top achievers, as I've done. 27 years, 258 of them, all over the world, every walk of life you could shake a stick at. What I've come to realize is that they think really simple things. If you look at most things that are new, that are created to make money, the creator tries to make them sound really profound, complicated, to make them look good, sound good, or sound more professional than they are. Top achievers will do the most simple thing that makes them the most effective. A lot of the elite sports people and entrepreneurs in particular I've interviewed, the most common phrase that they've used when I've pointed it out is, well, I do it because it works. They don't care about the science. They don't care how stupid they look doing it. I mean, I could tell you some things sports people do that we'd laugh at, but we don't laugh at them when we see them doing it, but we just don't know why they do it. And then when I point it out, they go, oh, yeah. So the top achievers, if they heard you say that, they would say, can I give you some ideas? And they would throw stuff at you as to how you could hit a million. I mean, there's one guy in particular I know who the very first thing he would say to you, well, it's me, by the way. The very first thing I would say to you is, somewhere out there's an organization with 1 million Christians.
There is indeed. In fact, my number one piece of business advice to most people is, who's got your customers and what do you need to do to get them to give them to you? So
therefore, it's realistic and achievable.
But that's very, very true. That's very true. Bloody hell! Now you're going to send me completely off on a different path.
I'm sorry, I've hijacked it. I'm sorry, mate. Sorry,
it's fine.
I do this from
it's
time
fine.
to time.
Sorry. It's an interesting thing because your goals.
Go on, sorry.
Your goals can be a limitation as much as they can be a accelerant. So I've seen a number of people who've got to their goal and gone, I've done it now. In fact, I've had a number of entrepreneurs I've worked with who've got often it's a cash target, but it's a cash target for the month, and they take their business through this massive roller coaster wave cycle. And they hit their cash target, it's the 12th of the month, and they're like, I'm going to go play golf for the rest of the month. And then they start the next month in a scramble of desperation because business has stopped. And they take themselves on this weird journey. So I wonder, I've got this view of goals, and it's a thing to set, but also a thing to hold lightly. And so I also want to come back to this, is that the thing I've noticed with goals is that very many people set them, and very, very few people work out what they actually have to do to achieve them. It's cool having it, but then there's the practical part of doing it. And what I actually find is the next limiting factor, and maybe this is me with the 1 million, right, as opposed to the 100,000, is there's a version of you that's not present today that needs to be present when that goal's achieved. And that means we have to change or adapt as a human being at many levels. There's also a practical
yeah.
Yeah, there's also a
To be,
practical element though, because if you
yeah.
want to speak in front of 100 million people or 10 million people in the next 23 years of standing on stage, you want to 10x it, right? Um, you probably don't have very many more hours left in the year, so that means 10 times more people in every audience, and then there's the list goes on, and then you go, actually, I don't know if I want to go and do whatever that is, that new volume of activity. And so I often play a game with saying to people, well, now we turned it into a practical series of activities. You've got to ask yourself, if you don't want to do it, where do you want your goal to be? There's often a reality checking part. And I suppose those people you've interviewed and your 1.2 plus million people, what have you run into in that sort of arena with them around that?
Hmm. I I would say that the those I've interviewed, and this is the majority of the people I've interviewed, because I'm very specific about who I interview.
Hmm.
Um, most of the people I've interviewed are very purpose driven, and their purpose defines their goals. So they tend to be reasonably together people. The few where I've got it wrong, it's been chalk and cheese, stand out, hit you in the face, obvious that, okay, they're not very purpose driven. They've achieved massive things, but you can tell they're terrified. You
Mm.
yourself have talked about this with some of the people you've worked with, and I see that a lot. Very successful people who are terrified. I work on a regular basis with chief executive peer groups, and sat around this table every month are businessmen and women with a turnover of between 1 and 500 million. They employ a lot of people. These are the size businesses that keep an economy of a country grinding. Not the big corporates, not the micros. These are the babies that make the world turn. And these men and women sort of walk in, stand there stirring their coffees, pontificating about the cars they've rocked up in, and there's a lot of peacocking going on. A lot of bravado. But as soon as it gets into a workshop, they are deeply honest and open people because they're
Mm.
human beings. They're no better or worse than anybody else. And when you ask them just a couple of cheeky questions, all of a sudden the pretense crumbles. And it only takes one of them to admit something, and the rest of them go, yeah, me too. And there's a
Mm.
big thing at the moment around imposter syndrome. And so many chief execs are terrified to their core because they've become focused, driven, purpose driven. They go after their goals. They get to really close to achieving it, and then one day they step out of the office and look at what they've built, and they go, "Oh my days! Look at what I'm responsible for." And then the pressure hits them. So then,
Mm.
instead of keeping going, thinking and behaving how they've done to get where they've got, all of a sudden they become quite protective. They start hunkering down, playing from a role of security rather than focus. And they start protecting what they've got, which is totally different to what got them to where they are. And so they stop being who they are. That inauthenticity is enough to trickle down through the workforce, and that's when you see companies go and then plateau, or God forbid, go the other way. And that they're terrified of being found out. A lot of really
Mm.
successful people are not massively academically sound, and I'm not. I didn't go to university, and so many top achievers haven't been to university.
Mm.
And even the ones that did do not credit their education as being the reason for their success. In fact, I can't honestly think of one that has.
So you've mentioned something that supports me in my pursuit of what I'm pursuing, is my faith.
Yeah.
It's the thing that helps me navigate imposter syndrome. Um, it's the thing that helps me say, I can hold my goal loosely, and actually, it's the next hour of my time that's really important. If I focus on this and have put the best version of me on the table with whatever I've got in front of me and do the best I can, if I just keep compounding that, and it helps me step out of fear as well, because often, 100,000 sounds huge to me. 1,000,000 sounds terrifying, in all honesty. I mean, that's, there's some big numbers in my mind. Especially of people to serve. That's a very big number for me. But it almost doesn't matter what the number is. If I just have direction going to scale as big as I possibly can, and I just focus with all of the faith that God will guide me for the next hour, and I just need to be the very best version of me with what I've got, be that marketing, blah, blah, blah. I find that imposter syndrome disappears. Fear often disappears. I think all of us can pull it together for an hour, 15 minutes maybe for some people. But if you look at that big goal and go, sometimes it's just overwhelming.
And that's why most people don't set goals, because the first chance they get, they set a really big one, but because they've never been taught how to set a goal, or they are following much taught incorrect processes. I'll go into that in a second. Much taught incorrect processes. They look at the big goal and it intimidates them rather than excites them. So let me explain why I just talked about incorrect, much taught processes.
Let me just press pause for a second. Like, are we going to shoot a sacred cow?
Several.
Fantastic. Let's do it.
I love that. All righty then, let's do this. Lock and load. So, there are three words or phrases nearly always used in goal setting, from childhood right up to business management training courses and in most business schools around the world. They say your goals should be realistic, achievable, or the buzz acronym, SMART. Now, out of 258 top achievers all over the world asking them the specific question, how do you set goals? Rob, how many do you think answered the question by going, ooh, David, I set realistic and achievable goals?
None of them. I know this. I've worked with Olympians, CEOs. But what you just said, though, to anybody listening, they know what you just said to be true, right? You just have to look at Elon Musk. Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to create a colony on Mars. I'm sorry, when you look at, based upon the reality and achievability of our world in 2024, it's not realistic or achievable. So we know that to be true about the highest performers. So what is it they do, David, that's different to that achievable, realistic?
Can I answer that in 1 second?
Yeah.
I've got to kill the cow now. So
go for it.
The acronym SMART is taught in every professional context of goal setting in every institution around the world. Most people who teach it that I've met, that if you ask them what is it based upon, either A, cannot answer that question, or B, quote Peter Drucker, a very, very famous American. Yeah, right. And Peter Drucker had some good stuff, don't get me wrong, but that's not true. Peter Drucker mentioned SMART goals in his book, and I think it was 1982, but he was a fanboy of a guy called George T. Duran, a project manager from the United States who worked on multi-billion-dollar water utility projects. And when I tracked down George T. Duran, I cannot honestly say it was a research interview. It was only a telephone conversation I had because he was very elderly at the time. But he said, "Oh yes, me and my team, we created the SMART acronym." Right? Okay. Wow. So no one gives you credit, and he literally went, "I know what you're going to do," and so I said, "So everyone's setting SMART goals because of you." He said, "I know, I'm misquoted." I said, "Sorry." He said, what the intent of SMART was. It was for project management. He said, when you work on huge projects, the steps to your goal should be SMART. Not the goal should be SMART, the steps to your goal. So what you said there, Rob, unwittingly but very eloquently, absolutely nailed what was intended by the people who invented proper goal setting. And so you said, if I just focus on the big, it's whoa. But when I do realistic and achievable steps towards the whoa gets done. It's the children's playground joke, mate. How do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. That's all it is. It's a children's playground joke. So every top achiever has massive goals, realistic and achievable steps. It is the number one most common trait throughout all the research interviews I've done. Every walk of life, all over the world.
It's interesting that I've used. I mean, I've been in this game for a long time. I've used SMART, but I changed it, and I changed the A for actionable and the R for recorded. Those were my tweaks. I often think if it's not recorded, you can't share it, and if you can't action something, then it's probably never going to happen. But yeah,
I'm a huge fan of goal setting because I earn my living from teaching people how to do it. But actually, I'm more of a fan of the quote, and I don't know who it's by, otherwise I would credit them, because I believe people should be credited when they come up with a doozy of a quote, which is, a job done is better than a goal set. If you do a job that's taking you closer to the goal, it's far better to have done that job than still have a piece of paper with a nice plan on it.
Yeah, so as you support people, and this wasn't quite where I thought our questions are going to go to, but it's cool. I like it. As you support people, they come up with a purpose and they come up with a goal for themselves, right?
So sorry, they don't come up with a purpose. They actually go through a process that helps them define what their purpose is. So again, there's so much terrible stuff written about purpose. And everyone who teaches purpose tends to bang on about core values, which is only 50% of the thing to do with purpose. So a purpose is being congruent to who you really are. It's actions and your raison d'etre, your modus operandi, that is who you really are. So when you're on purpose, things are great for you rather than great with you. You're being authentic, you're being true to yourself, your potential, and in service to whoever it is, your family, your friends, or God. Now, most people are never, ever courageous enough to even look into their purpose because they dismiss it as fluffy, woolly nonsense. I'm ashamed to say I did for 50 years of my life. But then I interviewed Professor Adrian Furnham, at the time Europe's leading business psychologist. Rob, that man is so clever that if we stand next to him, we get clever through osmosis. Right?
Soak it up.
Clever dude. And he says that your purpose is who you are. And what most people do when they talk about purpose is they look at their values because that's nice, that's fluffy, that's warm, safe, comfortable. He says, but it's only half of who you are as a human being. You're also your insecurities, but no one likes to look at those. He said, what you have to do is go through quite a painful process of truly understanding your values and your insecurities, because then they're a strength in your decision making. Once you truly know who you are, and we're not talking personality algorithm question profiling tools here, we're talking you know yourself better than any algorithm does. So if you can be brutally honest with yourself and truly know what your insecurities and values are based on, you can look at any opportunity and simply say to yourself, by doing this thing, are my values met and my insecurities satisfied? Because then you're being true to yourself, off you go. And I said, whoa, rewind. Did you just say values met and insecurities satisfied? He went, yes. I said, so you're giving in to your insecurities? He went, yeah, because it's who you really are. You can't fight it. He said, sure, you could have therapy, but how many people do you know who would volunteer to go and have therapy? They don't. So if you're going to, go and get it, sort it, be insecurity free, try it, see how that works as a plan, because we'll always have insecurities.
Mm.
He says, but if you understand them and use them as a strength in your decision making, you will make effortless, 99 times out of 100 correct decisions. Then you're purpose driven, because wherever you go, there you are.
I often talk about it as superpowers and glass ceilings, and we've all got a bunch of human superpowers that most people run away from their superpowers because somebody once said,
Yeah.
"Oh, David Hyner, you speak too much, and you speak quiet," and then
Oh, Rob, more than one person has said that to me.
that's it. But when you unlock that as a superpower, it turns you into the UK or Europe's like busiest public speaker or professional speaker,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
So often our superpowers are things that people have told us we shouldn't do or shouldn't think or shouldn't use, and they try and quash it down into something else. But your superpower is that powers are there to be deployed. So the first thing for me is identify your superpowers. The next thing is we all know in different aspects of our life, and it's simple, health, wealth, and relationships is a great way to chunk it, is we've all tried different things and we've run up and we can see where we want to go to, and then you go smack and you hit a glass ceiling. And those are your insecurities. Those are the bits that your limiting factors, should we call them.
Yeah.
And the time spent in working out either accepting the glass ceilings or navigating your way around them, whichever one is right for you. What's really funny is when you lean into your superpowers, the glass ceilings just like go to one side and you carry on moving upwards because they become less relevant. Or the glass becomes thinner and you just smash through them.
The purpose enables that. The purpose enables that, because if you've got a reason to do something greater than your fears and insecurities, as soon as you get knocked down, instead of rocking in a corner like I used to do a lot when I was younger, now you then stand up and you look at the problem and go, is that all you got? And you go again. And you normally get round it second, third, fourth time. I interviewed, God, can I tell you a great story from my research? I interviewed a guy, Eugene Codrington. He's a British Jamaican guy who makes me look tiny. He's a beast of a man. He's a colossus. And he's the most gentle guy you'll ever meet and chat to. Deep, commanding, authoritative tone. And I watched him train and teach. He was remarkable. And when I interviewed him, I said, what's the one thing you do differently to everybody else for you to be 7 times world team karate champion? He said, yeah, I know. And he says, David, he said, when I get into a ring for a fight, he said, the person I'm fighting doesn't think they're going to get knocked down. They allow ego, pride, and adrenaline to get in the way of what's true. And he said, this is contact sport. The slightest little slip and the biggest man goes down. He said, I assume I'm going to get knocked down. So I train mentally, emotionally, and physically to get back up again. I convince myself that if I'm getting knocked down, I'm getting up again. The other person doesn't think they're going to get knocked down. So when I put him down, he can't get up again. And he's so purpose-driven. I love that quote. And it's so true of the many, many stories I've got from the research interviews of just how really effective, successful men and women, and again, success doesn't just mean money, it can mean anything, sport, authors, rock stars, engineers, academics, entertainers, psychologists, neuropsychology, it doesn't matter what the genre of people I've interviewed. So many of them have got stories of how, yeah, I just didn't give in because, and they can tell you like that, why they didn't give in. And the very first, and up until the age of 30, Rob, I'm ashamed to say I was immature and I was a coward. I ran away from setting big goals. Now I'm just immature because I'm no longer a coward. I, the very first big goal I ever set and achieved was when a group of people and a major organisation tried to stop me setting the goal. But I had to do it because I promised my mum on her deathbed I would. So I did it anyway.
So we've just wandered around fears a little bit and all sorts of things. And, the probably one of the biggest fears on planet Earth is doing what you do for a job. It's standing up in front of a group of people and offering something to somebody. I once read, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but people fear speaking in public more than death itself.
True.
I want us just to wander there because all of us are required at different points in time throughout our life to stand up in front of a group of people and deliver a message. Maybe it's your wedding day or your best friend's wedding day. Maybe it's a funeral. Maybe it's a graduation thing, a talk at work. I mean, there's a million and one different whens. What are some golden nuggets that you can give people to allow them to have more calmness in their heart as they stand up and do what they've either volunteered or usually been asked to do?
Let's deal with a couple of the big ones out the bat. A wedding speech or a eulogy at a funeral are probably the two most challenging talks anybody could give. And you're right. Those are the two that most people experience public speaking for the first time. So it's little wonder that sometimes people aren't, because they don't know how, they're not prepared, so they're terrified, so they don't deliver as confidently as they wanted to. So their experience then of speaking in public is, that was horrible. I used to be physically sick with nerves. I used to throw up in the toilet, and it was only a couple of years in when, instead of understanding something, I accepted it. So please take this. How many times have you ever gone to the theatre to listen to a speaker, to watch a movie, listen to a band that you loved as a kid, and you're sitting there going, oh, I hope they're really bad? No one's ever done that. No one's ever done that. You are desperate for that person to be good. But we, walking out onto that stage, will look at the people sat in front of us and we're going, oh, they hate me. Look at that person scowling. Oh, no. And we create this whirlwind of negative assumptions. We don't look at the person on the front row who's going, oh, I hope they're brilliant. We look at the person who's going, impress me then. Because we're driven by two primary needs, right? We want the lovely people who think we're amazing because we like to be liked. And we want to win over the people who don't like us because we like to be accepted. We ignore the 90% in the middle for whom, as long as we serve them properly, they'll love us. And then you've got 95%, because those, you'll never win them round because they don't even like themselves, let's be honest. So what we do is we get so hung up on trying to win less than 5% of the room over when we should focus on 95. And if you go seeking approval and acceptance from everybody, that's about us. When you are a presenter of anything, music, acting, speaking, training, coaching, I mean, you know this as a great coach yourself, it's not about you, it's about the client. And as too many speakers go there seeking validation, approval, acceptance, praise, makes my blood boil when I hear speakers at speakers events go, oh, I knocked it out the park, got a standing ovation. Well, okay, great, you got a standing ovation. My next question would be, what did they do after your talk? Was there any impact whatsoever? Because that's my measurement. I don't. I'm grateful for a round of applause. I'm very flattered when people leave lovely things on my LinkedIn profile, recommendations, and get in touch with me 10, 15, 20 years later, telling me of things I've achieved using my goal setting process. Humbles me to my core. But I'm overwhelmed with joy when people say, Dave, look what I did. Because that's my measurement. It's service. So when you are in service to the room, to your audience, if you're scared, that's about you and your ego and your vanity. If you can remove that and just give it to them, just being you. And if you want me to dumb it down a bit, I normally try to suggest to people that you should present as if you were out with a group of friends and you're on your second glass of wine.
I was actually going to say one of my pieces of advice to people is you can have the first glass of wine before you stand up at the wedding, but please don't have the eighth because it won't go as well. One of the human factors I've noticed in this, and I is when I deliver a new keynote for the first time, an organization said, will you come? We know you've got this wide area of expertise, narrow in on this for us. And we've both been doing this for a long time. It takes me for an hour on stage now, at least 12 hours of preparation to pull off something that's a good enough quality.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm only 50% in a comfort zone, because normally I've got other things that I can pull from other places, and you can kind of piece the jigsaw puzzle together, and that's 12 hours. If it's something I haven't touched for 5 years or slightly aside, that 12 can go to 24 quite quickly.
Yeah, easily.
And people, I think, they think for their 20 minutes of their talk that they've been asked to give, they try and fudge it all together in a 2-hour time window because they're busy. And you almost create the problems for yourself by trying to rush the process. And if you want to be really good and get really good outcomes, I remember these days it's fine, but at one point in time I used to drive my car, and we didn't have Bluetooth or anything at those points in time, and I'd rehearse in the car as I was driving, speaking out loud, getting the first 60 seconds right. You get if you can get the first 30 to 60 seconds right, everything else sort of takes care of itself. And people used to think I was bonkers. And today with Bluetooth, if you're seen speaking in your car as you're driving, nobody bothers batting an eyelid. They just think you're on your phone or something. But I often think, the one thing we could all do more is prepare more. Because once you can feel your way through that talk, regardless of how long it is, and you're confident in you that you know what you're doing, it spills over every other direction. What's your preparation time for something new? Is it similar thing, or?
I hardly do anything new. I've only got about 5 or 6 deliveries, all of them based upon my research. I only do those deliveries. If someone asks me for something I don't do it. I recommend them another expert, because that's in service to the client and in service to my sanity. So I'm subject shallow and marketplace deep. So I can go to any marketplace with just these few subject lines. Rehearsal is, you're right, in practical terms, that is the number one thing people can do, because you don't get into a boxing room with Mike Tyson because you want to learn how to box. Because as Mike Tyson so eloquently said, everyone has a plan until I punch them in the face. You practice. My one big talk I have probably delivered 10,000 times in my career so far. I still rehearse it in the car like you just said you do. I still do it. Why? Because every audience deserves to hear it for the first time. And more importantly, because I've delivered it 10,000 times, so do I. I need to convince people that I'm still as passionate, which I am, about my subject as I was on day one.
Mm.
So rehearsal is critical. You also said something else that's important, which is if you can nail the first 60 seconds and craft it until you can't get it wrong, start strong, but also craft and master the closing 60 seconds as well. If you can finish strong, start strong, the middle takes care of itself.
Mm. I'd encourage anybody to go and watch some Toastmasters World Championship sort of winner talks and whatever else, and just go and notice how the average talk you see at a wedding or a funeral or wherever it may well be, and what they do, it almost can be North and South Pole on occasions. And I know they're often deemed to be some of the best in the world at speaking, but things people will notice is that often people just start with a story without a thank you or an introduction or anything. They just step in, and there's quite a lot to be learnt from there if you can be brave enough to do it. As as you think about people often needing to speak more, how how do people become a better speaker? There is rehearsal, there is observing others. Um, you put something out on Facebook the other day about the difference between being a public speaker and a professional speaker. And,
Yeah,
and, and that caught my eye as I was making notes on my iPad for today. And I was thinking, a lot of people are actually, with the advent of needing to use social media more and 60-second videos, a lot of people are needing to transition much more closely to being a professional speaker than maybe ever they did in the
true.
past.
Yeah.
How how can people do that for themselves? What guidance can you give them, David, or where to go?
I would. Well, you've actually said the first thing I would say, which is go and watch fantastic speakers.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter if they're celebrities. Celebrity has nothing to do with it. Some of the best speakers in the world you won't have heard of. Yeah, it's remarkable. So go and watch great professional or great motivational speakers. Go and watch great speeches from leaders, and just watch. Listen. In fact, watch it twice. First time, watch it and hear what they say. Second time, watch it and see how they're delivering it, just like you suggested. Because
Hmm.
if you, and this is why we rehearse, by the way, because if you know what it is you're going to say, you can focus on how you're saying it. And
Hmm.
what's his name? There's an American speaker. Um, my mind has just gone blank, which is embarrassing because I do like to quote people. There's a wonderful American speaker who who says that you really have to be yourself when you're speaking. It's no good being who you're not. Otherwise, people won't believe you.
Hmm.
They just won't believe you. You have to be yourself.
Who are a couple of your favorite? I'll share. I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours. Who are a couple of your favorite speakers out there that you like to study, watch, listen to? Who really floats your boat?
Okay, I like people who convince me. Right, so this same American speaker, whose name I just can't remember, he says you either say something, tell me something, or you convince me. I like speakers who convince me. I love conviction in a voice. And so I'm not normally a fan of softly spoken people who stand still behind a lectern speaking kind of speakers. But there's a South African ex-Special Forces guy called Rory McKenzie. He's a giant of a man, ex-Special Forces, lost his legs to an IED, and then rode across the Atlantic when
As you do.
70% of the power from rowing comes from your legs. And he has done incredible things. And he stands there on stage, a giant of a man, intelligent. He's even good looking. I hate him. He's intelligent, good looking. He's got this incredible story, and he's so humble about it. And I have never seen him speak where the whole room just hasn't lifted the second he finishes in applause. Now, impact is more important. The people remember, once they've seen Rory McKenzie speak, they remember him, and he makes you think and behave differently as a result. So he's one guy. There's a female speaker called Cathy O'Dowd. She's summited Everest, I think, from 3 different sides. She's a remarkable speaker, talking about proper leadership. You know, how to deal with a team when 2 people have just died in your party and things like this. You know, whoa, seriously good speaker. And again, quite humble. And then there's an American humorist speaker who talks about happiness in the workplace. And he's one of the busiest speakers on the planet. He's called Tim Gard. And I'm a bit of a fanboy of Tim Gard. He's naturally funny. He's what my friend Alan calls, he's got funny bones.
I've got 2. I like to go and take my biases about all sorts of things and throw them to one side when I look at speakers. I want to go and look at speakers who maybe values-wise or religion-wise or something, they're different to me. Because I think that we can get too focused on what we believe to be true and we miss all the gold. And just because you don't like somebody's message doesn't mean to say they don't achieve something that's remarkable. And so I look at early Barack Obama. I think there's a 2009 and 2011 speech, and then when he became president of the US. I look at him and the way he speaks, and there's something, his timing and the way he speaks, not necessarily what he says, but his timing and everything else is very, very, very good.
He's chocolate.
And there's a lot to be learned. But the other one, and this might get me cancelled on YouTube, but I'm going to say it anyway, is, and this isn't for the message, but it's actually Adolf Hitler. And I go and look at how he held hundreds of thousands of people in the palm of his hands for 4, 5, 6 hours at a time, with jumping around and cheering and clapping and this. Let's take the message out of it. The sheer fact that another human being could do that and speak a message for that length of time and bring an audience together like that. Absolutely remarkable. And interestingly, and people should go check this out, there's actually a few of Hitler's biggest speeches have been translated from German into English over the past few years. And his speeches mostly, especially early Hitler, aren't as against the Jews and things as you think they are. It's actually, there's a lot of make Germany great again stuff going on. Anyway, regardless of the message, I think when you put all that to one side and go, wow, look what somebody can do. Look what you can achieve. And what if you could take your message that's positive and for good intent and for everything else and deliver it like a Hitler did, right? For all of the right reasons, you're unstoppable at that point in time.
If we're looking at it from a presentation skills, you cannot argue with what you've just said. He influenced millions and millions and millions of people. You're right. Maybe he didn't have a necessarily values-driven purpose or goal, but I'm sure some psychologists will have something very deep and profound to say about that. But you're right. It is about the powerful to influence. And what you've actually kind of reminded me of there, Rob, is that anyone who stands in front of people to deliver a message needs to be very careful, because what you have is an ability to influence people. And some people get very high on that dopamine hit. Some people get very high on it. So it's important that you are doing it for the right reason. You're doing it in service of the audience. because it is a great responsibility. It's a great responsibility.
It's both. It's the privilege and the responsibility, isn't it? I've got two questions to wind us up with. You've mentioned in
Yep.
service a lot throughout this, and so I'd like to know how your faith plays out throughout your work. What is there that you hold consciously, or what is there that you just see happening by matter of being David?
Well, I used to be a very open-minded person, quite happy for anybody to have a faith or a religion, and washed over me until 10 years ago when I had I was hit in the face by a moment that made me go, okay, I have to believe now. And ever since then, my life and my business has been still a roller coaster. Just because you have any measure of success or happiness in your life doesn't stop the fact that life still happens to you. So life is still a roller coaster, but I have found an incredible sense of certainty from having a faith. Incredible sense, a certainty that I never had before, and a courage and conviction to do the right thing in very, very tough moments where in the past I may have given in, walked away, cried like a baby, thrown my dolly well and truly out the pram and probably kicked the pram. Now I stay. Now I try to do the right thing. And life gets easier when you do the right thing. When you do things for a quick win, it always comes back at you tenfold. So it's far better to do the right thing.
Love it. The final question.
He keeps pushing me into the education sector, which is nowhere near as well paid as the corporate world. But I, for some reason, seem to be able to connect with kids who are just like me when I was their age. And I think I've presented to about 900,000 young adults in 24 years.
Wow.
And every time I try to focus a lot more on the corporate work, back comes the education sector. It says God just keeps pushing me right back there. So I don't resist anymore.
He's steering the ship, eh?
Yeah.
Final question. If you could have a cup of coffee with Jesus and ask him any one question, what would it be and why?
My son has severe autism and special needs. He only has 300 words in his vocabulary. I have never had a conversation with my son. He's 18 years of age. I would ask him for a conversation with my son. Is what I would ask him. One conversation.
That would be incredible. David, that was very profound to finish. Thank you.
Yeah. Wasn't expecting that one.
Wow.
Thank you.
The Holy Spirit delivers all sorts of things in all sorts of ways. David, if people want to become a professional speaker like you, use your services, check you out, stalk you somewhere, where's best for them to find you, and what could they expect?
If they want to learn how to present more confidently in public, follow Rob's advice. Join something like Toastmasters or National Speakers Clubs. There are clubs all over the world. They are the world's greatest at teaching you how to confidently present in public. If you are wanting to or already speak in public, train, coach, speak as part of your job, and you want to make it a professional part of your life, by that I mean get paid for it, I would look to see if your country, and many countries do now, have a professional speaking association, the PSA. There are organizations all over the world, or there is a global speakers federation overarching all of them. So there you won't get hardcore learning and development in how to speak in public. It's all about how to speak professionally and how to grow a professional speaking business. So those are the two sources of information I would talk about. If for any reason people want to get hold of me, you can stalk me on LinkedIn. There's 4,000 free videos for you on YouTube. Facebook, usual channels. Just put my name in. I've got an unusual name, so I'm over the internet like a rash.
I love it. I love it. We'll put those links in the description to this, the audio and the video.
Okay.
David, as we just part, what's your final hope for the balance of 2024 into 2025? Maybe for you, me, and the rest of the world.
I'm going to show my age a bit now. There was an American comedian called Bob Newhart, and he had a fantastic sketch, Rob, where he pretended to be a psychiatrist, and he was helping this woman with a profound problem she had. And after listening to her for an hour, he just went, "Stop it." And I went, "What?" "Just stop it." And all he did was say, "Stop it." Now, I want everybody of a polarized extreme opinion, and it doesn't matter whether it's political, societal, racial, religious. It doesn't matter who you are, what part of the world you're in. If all of us good people, which is the 97% of us, if most of us just tell those handful of people who are turning this world upside down to just stop it. Because most of us just want to rub along. Thank you very much. That's what I'd say.
David Hyner, thank you so much for your time.
God bless you, man.
Cheers.
Be good.